I met Sean in our senior year of high school. We were in the same advanced biology class, and I vividly remember the first day he sat down next to me. So natural, it felt like destiny had arranged it. Sean was unlike any guy I'd ever known. Calm, thoughtful, with eyes that really listened. That's how we stayed together for 10 years. That love was simple and beautiful at first. Until Margaret stepped out from the role of ideal future mother-in-law and became an unshakable shadow in my marriage. Margaret, or Mally as everyone called her, was a strong, assertive woman who laughed loudly and hugged tightly. She had 2 sons, Sean, my husband, and Brian, Sean's younger brother by 2 years. From the very first time she met me, Mally welcomed me warmly, saying, "Oh my, finally I have a daughter." At that time, I was touched. I wasn't close with my birth mother. Our relationship was always tense and cold. So I saw Mally's acceptance as a gift from heaven. In the early years of dating Sean, she often invited me out to eat, to the spa, and even suggested I call her mom pretty early on. I thought it was sweet back then, but looking back, maybe I should have been more cautious. Mally always asked me weird questions. If Sean and I both fell into the sea, who would you save first? What do you think I should wear at our engagement party? At the time, I just laughed it off, thinking she was joking. But over time, those jokes started giving me chills. Once, on Sean's birthday, I planned a small surprise party. I called Mally and asked if she could keep Sean at home while friends were preparing. She was silent for a moment, then sweetly said, "Of course, but don't you think you're overstepping? Sean is still my son, not yours alone." I laughed, thinking she was joking. But somehow, my heart chilled a little. Sean always defended his mother. Whenever I told him the strange things Mally said, he'd just pat my head and laugh. "You're just too sensitive. Mom only loves you, that's why." I believed him, blindly. 10 years is too long not to place full trust in the person beside you. But now, looking back, I see I ignored too many red flags because I was afraid of losing what I thought was stability. One winter afternoon, Mally and I were making tea in the kitchen. She placed her hand over mine, looked at me for a long time, and said, "You know, if one day you hurt Sean, I won't stay silent. I will do everything to keep my son whole." At that time, I thought it was a loving warning. Now I understand, it wasn't a warning. It was a declaration of war. And I, a girl who once dreamed of a home with the man of her life, didn't know that the real enemy I had to fight in this marriage was the woman who once Sean always said that if there was one thing he was determined to get right in life, it was the proposal. He wasn't the flashy or dramatic type, but he believed a perfect proposal needed the right timing, genuine feelings, and most importantly, to be a real surprise. He even joked, "If you guess the day I propose, I'll just cancel the whole plan." Enid her arms to hug me and called me daughter. I laughed out loud, thinking it was just a sweet joke. But later I realized Sean really considered being guessed right, unforgivable. One early September evening, I stopped by my in-laws for dinner. The atmosphere was cozy. Sean hugged me from behind. Mally served her proudest lasagna, and Brian laughed at an old story about a skiing trip years ago. When marriage came up, Mally smiled knowingly, as if she already knew how things would unfold. I teased, "So when will Sean get down on one knee and propose to me?" So I started guessing the date. October 5th, or November 6th, November 12th, the 15th? I kept going, non-stop, just to tease, but when I reached November 18th, Mally flinched like someone had tapped her shoulder. Her eyes darted to Sean, then back to me, her lips moving as if to say something, but she stopped. My heart tightened. I pretended not to notice, kept going with the meaningless list for a few more minutes. But I wasn't stupid. I knew, and just a second after Mally's glance, I knew Sean knew that I knew. That evening, when we got home, I hugged Sean tightly. I wanted to tell him that I was sorry for unintentionally ruining what he had prepared, that Mally had let the secret slip, even though I hadn't meant for it. But just as I was about to speak, Sean held me closer and said gently, "You really didn't guess any of it right, did you?" I froze, nodded. A lie to preserve his dream, and I thought, mine too. In the days that followed, I tried to forget that fateful day. I told myself to act like I didn't know. But Mally didn't let it go. 1 week before the proposal, she called me with a heavily implied tone. "Remember to wear something really nice on the 18th. Oh, did I let something slip?" I was stunned. I stayed silent. She laughed loudly, as if it were just a silly joke. On November 18th, Sean took me for a walk by the lake, where we first kissed at 17. I stepped into my in-laws' house to grab a coat before going out. Mally immediately rushed over and hugged me tight. "Finally, you really are my daughter." Those words, instead of moving me, made me want to run away. I felt like I was no longer the main character in my own life. I was just a puppet in her play. I went to the bathroom to calm myself. When I stepped out, I heard whispers in the hallway. Mally was rifling through Sean's pockets, speaking like a commander. "Let me see the ring again. Just once." Sean weakly resisted. "Mom, come on." I stood frozen in the dark. I didn't want to listen any further, but my ears betrayed me. I pushed the door open to signal I was about to leave. They flinched. I pretended not to hear, not to see, pretending like my heart hadn't shattered. When Sean got down on one knee to propose as the sunset faded, I gave the biggest smile of my life. I hugged him, cried, and said yes, like a rehearsed script. Sean looked at me with eyes shining like a kid who just finished a Christmas gift. He didn't know I knew, and I didn't have the courage to ruin that moment. After the proposal, Mally pulled me aside, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Don't disappoint me. Sean is everything to me." I didn't answer. Inside me, something had changed, something like trust, like peace. Quietly crumbled. I used to think that planning a wedding would be one of the sweetest experiences in life. But when you marry a man who can't say no to his mother, every dream, even the smallest one, gets twisted into an endless, exhausting battle. After I said yes to Sean's proposal, I suggested a simple, low-key wedding. Just a few close people, a marriage certificate, and a warm evening together. I've always been an introvert, never wanting to be the center of any party. Sean understood that, and he agreed. But then Margaret found out about the plan and immediately declared, "There's no way my son is marrying without a church, a cross, and the sound of bells. I've waited 25 years for this day. You can't ruin my dream just because you don't like the wedding dress." Before I could react, everything was handled smoothly, as if she were a professional wedding planner. A week after the proposal, I received an email from a church I'd never visited, titled, "Hold the date March 20th, Wedding of Sean and my name." Sean just shrugged and laughed when I confronted him. "Mom just wants to help. You know she's always dreamed of having a daughter. Can't you indulge her just this once?" Indulge. Just once. I'd indulged from the moment we picked the wedding date to when I stayed silent during the proposal. And now I had to indulge again, to please a woman I once thought of as a mother, but who I gradually realized was more like a dictator. I made one thing clear. The guest list would be under 100 people, and absolutely no one I hadn't met. Sean agreed. We made the list together, about 50 people, all close friends and family. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking at least I still had the right to choose who would be at our wedding. I was wrong. As soon as Margaret saw the list, she screamed at dinner like someone had poured boiling water on her. What? No Justine? No Rudy? Are you crazy? They're Sean's relatives, our family. This day isn't just for you two, it's for everyone. I replied softly, but I've never met them, and Sean isn't close to them either. We want an intimate wedding. She stood up abruptly, slammed her hand on the table so hard the glass spilled. You're just an outsider stepping into this family. Don't forget that. Sean stayed silent, didn't look at me or his mom, just stared at his plate, like if he stared deep enough, he'd find courage. But he said nothing. Later, he hugged me on the way home and said, I know you're tired, but don't worry, I've got a plan. A few days later, I found out Sean's plan. He purposely chose our wedding date to clash with Margaret's annual family vacation in Florida. So they were invited, but couldn't come. And sure enough, they sent gifts and cash with apologies for not attending. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because inside, a new disappointment blossomed. Sean couldn't say no to his mom. He just sidestepped, quietly, sneakily, like a kid afraid of being scolded. And I was about to marry that kind of man. That's when I started writing everything down. The little feelings I had to suppress, the times I was pushed aside, the words I swallowed. I didn't know why I was writing. Maybe just to keep from going crazy. But maybe, deep down, I knew I'd someday need proof that I wasn't making it all up, that I'd seen something from the start, but had lied to myself into thinking it would just go away. I was never the type of woman who grew up dreaming of a pristine white wedding dress, tight at the waist, flowing like clouds, costing thousands. To me, a wedding isn't a stage. It's a ceremony marking the bond between two people, not a performance. So I quietly browsed online and found a simple, elegant dress with delicate lace on the sleeves and chest, priced exactly at $49.99. No one knew, no one guessed, not even Sean. The first time I tried it on, I looked in the mirror and smiled for the first time since the wedding planning began. The dress hugged my figure just right, not too flashy, exactly my style. I took a quick selfie just to capture the moment, with no intention to share. But peace is always a luxury when you have a mother-in-law named Margaret. Somehow, news about the dress got to her. Maybe Sean mentioned it accidentally, or Brian, Sean's brother, let it slip. Whoever it was, the result was the same. One evening, I got a message from Margaret. You're wearing the wedding dress, right? Send me a picture. I'm so excited, I replied gently. I want to keep it a surprise for the wedding day. I won't send a photo. Ellipsis. And after a moment, another message appeared. Do you know how much I've longed for this day? You're my daughter, yet I don't even get to see you in your wedding dress before the big day? I sighed. Didn't want to argue. Didn't want to apologize for protecting my own boundaries. But Margaret didn't stop at messages. A few days later, she called, voice full of hurt and resentment. You know, I once dreamed of going with my daughter to a bridal shop, picking every layer of fabric, every pearl. I even saved money since Sean was in high school, just to buy the most beautiful dress for his future wife. I stayed silent, unsure whether to react with reason or emotion. I never borrowed her dream. I never made any promises. But the disappointment in her voice made me feel like I'd committed a crime, just for buying a dress on my own. She ended the call with a sentence that stabbed at my self-esteem. I don't understand how you can be so selfish. That night, I talked to Sean. I needed him to stand with me, but he just smiled softly. You're being a bit extreme. Show her the picture. What's the harm? She just wants to share some feelings. I looked at him like a stranger. She's not sharing, she's controlling, and you're letting her, as gently as possible. Sean went silent, then left for the living room. I stayed in the room, deleting the selfie I took when trying on the dress. The initial relief was crushed by the feeling of being scrutinized and pressured. The next morning, I went to my in-laws' house to get some documents for the church paperwork. When I stepped into the living room, I froze. Margaret was sitting at the dining table, holding the photo of me in the wedding dress, printed in full color, crystal clear. A photo I never sent to anyone. I got chills. How did you get that photo? I asked. She raised an eyebrow. Sean said he sent it. But maybe it's an automatic save from your iCloud when you used the computer last time? I'm not sure. Then she smiled, as if what she did was completely innocent. I clenched my fists. I turned to Sean, who just walked in from the kitchen. Did you send it to her? Sean hesitated. I just said you had a photo. Maybe she found it herself. I didn't need to hear more. In that moment, I understood. I wasn't just fighting Margaret. I was fighting an alliance where I was never a priority. That night, I went home, unlocked my phone, changed all my passwords, signed out of iCloud, and wiped all personal data from the shared computer. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself again. No wedding dress, no romantic light, just me, with a truth weighing heavier. I was marrying a man not brave enough to protect me from his own mother. I used to think that no matter how many conflicts had happened, my wedding day, at least, would be the one time I got to be the main character, even if just for a day, a moment, once in a lifetime. But no. I underestimated Margaret. I arrived at the church early in the morning with my bridesmaids and makeup artist. Everything was still a mess. The dress I brought was quietly hanging in a small room behind the sanctuary. As I stepped into the main hall to greet the coordinator, I froze. Margaret was there. She was made up. And she was wearing a dress, a pure white dress, white, lace, a high neckline, a long train sweeping the floor. For a moment, I was speechless. The bridesmaid beside me, also my best friend, whispered as if she couldn't believe it. Is she cosplaying as the bride? I pulled myself together, stepped closer to Margaret, and asked, though I already knew the answer, Are you planning to wear this dress for the entire ceremony? She turned to me, beaming like the chandelier above. Of course. This is a big day. I have to look radiant too. It's not just about you looking beautiful. I pressed my lips together softly. I glanced at Sean, who had just walked in. He saw the scene, his mother, dazzling in a white dress in the middle of the hall, and he didn't react. Not a word. No sign of outrage. He just came over and whispered to me, Mom's been preparing for this for a month. Please, don't make a big deal out of today. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Those words sliced through the fragile pride I had left. I neither nodded nor refused. I just quietly turned away and walked straight to the dressing room, feeling like I'd just handed the stage over to an imposter. The wedding began at 3 p.m. Guests arrived one by one, looking at me, then Margaret. Some mistook her for a middle-aged bride remarrying. Others asked, Is she the bride's aunt? You two are wearing matching colors, huh? I smiled but didn't bother correcting them. What was there to correct? In everyone's eyes, I was just a supporting character in a show directed by the woman in the white dress sitting front and center. I tried to stay calm, but when it came to photos, everything collapsed. I hired a close friend as the photographer. She was serious, professional, and understood that I wanted every moment private and genuine. But Margaret wouldn't leave us alone. Whenever we got ready to shoot, she jumped right into the frame, phone raised. "Look here. Look at mommy's camera. 1, 2, 3, smile." My friend politely offered, "You can stand beside us. I'll send you the photos later." But Margaret waved her off, bluntly responding, "I don't trust anyone else. I need photos from the mother-in-law's point of view." Then she stepped up, wedged herself between Sean and me, shoving her phone in his face. "Look at me. Smile." I was pushed aside. My dress was stepped on for the third time in 10 minutes. When I gently mentioned it, Margaret scoffed. "That's because you picked a dress as long as a tablecloth." Everyone saw it, but no one said a word. No one wanted to confront Margaret. Even Sean, who was supposed to protect me, just repeated the familiar line, "Come on, Mom's just having fun. Let it go. Let it go." I had let go since the ruined engagement party, since the stolen wedding dress photo, since the manipulated guest list. By now, I understood. This wedding was never mine. It was Margaret's show, and I was just a stand-in for her unfinished dream. The wedding ended in the glow of sunset. It should have been romantic, but for me, it was a dull finale. While everyone applauded congratulations, Margaret quickly posted a dozen blurry selfies she took herself on Facebook. The caption read, "Finally, I have a real daughter. I'm proud of Sean and thank God the dress I chose fits the vibe." I didn't bother reading the comments. I was afraid I'd see someone saying she looked too young, or as charming as the real bride. After leaving the church, I thought, finally, I could take a breath, that the worst was behind me, and the rest of the wedding day would be gentler, softened by the evening light. I was wrong again. We held the reception in a small hall Sean and I rented, a cozy space just right for 60 guests, exactly what I wanted from the start. But the atmosphere at the party, which should have been warm, natural, and intimate, felt strange, partly because of Margaret. Or more precisely, because Margaret was still wearing that white dress. She didn't change after the ceremony, didn't retreat backstage. She sat front and center in the hall, engaging with each guest as if she were the bride. When Sean and I walked in, there she was, holding a glass of wine, smiling brightly, waving like a celebrity greeting fans. Every guest who came to congratulate us was first intercepted by her. "Isn't it beautiful? Mom picked it all. From the flowers to the tablecloth color to the band, I planned it all." I stood 3 steps away, hearing every word clearly. Not Sean and my name chose this. Not the kids wanted it this way. But Mom. Before I could say a word back, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from friends, from family, from people not even at the wedding. The content. "Congrats to you both. Your wedding photos on Facebook are stunning. Wait, wasn't this supposed to be a private wedding? How does everyone know?" I opened my phone, went to Facebook, and froze. Margaret had posted a series of unedited, blurry, off-angle photos where everyone's face was turned toward her. The caption read, "My son got married today." I couldn't hold back my tears. Please like the pretty ones for me. And most importantly, she posted before Sean and I did, before we even had a chance to announce it to our friends. I looked at Sean, hoping for a reaction, any sign of displeasure, but he just shrugged and said, "Let Mom be. She's happy, that's what matters. We still have a whole honeymoon week ahead. Don't ruin it. I was speechless. Don't ruin it. Her stealing the spotlight from the bride, posting photos first, ruining all the best images of my big day. To him, it was just, let it go. That wasn't all. Sean and I quietly walked to the corner of the room where the wedding cake was neatly placed. I didn't like fuss, so I chose a simple single-tier cake decorated with dried flowers. No one was told. I wanted a few private minutes with Sean to cut the cake and take quiet photos. No fuss. We had just placed our hands on the knife when a piercing scream tore through the hall. "Wait! Mom isn't ready yet!" Everyone turned. Margaret, phone in hand, tossed her dress and stormed across the room like someone had just stolen her moment. "Step back. Cut again. Let me adjust the camera first." I swallowed my anger, but Sean leaned over and whispered, "Just one shot for Mom. Then we're done." So we had to redo the cake cutting, not for the moment, but for Margaret's phone camera. After it was over, I retreated to a corner, quietly exhaling in exhaustion. Before I could even take a sip of water, a bridesmaid pulled me aside. "Do you know what she just did?" "What?" "She took over the sweetheart table." I turned around. Sure enough, Margaret was sitting at the bride and groom's table, alone, like a queen, holding a glass of wine, legs crossed, signaling the servers to bring the cake right to her. I approached gently and said, "Mom, this seat is for us to sit together." She looked at me, unmoved. "You just went around with your friends." "My feet are tired. Can I sit for a bit?" Sean once again stood silently, said nothing, didn't ask her to leave, didn't hold my hand, did nothing to prove that today was our day, not his mother's. That night, while everyone drank and danced, I stood alone under the dim lights. I remembered the first time Margaret called me daughter. I remembered her whisper in the kitchen, "If you ever hurt Sean, I won't stay silent." Now I understand. I didn't have to do anything wrong. In her eyes, I was a threat. From the very beginning, I was braced for the fact that the wedding day wouldn't be perfect. I knew I'd have to yield, swallow my anger, and force a smile. But at least, I thought, I'd have the wedding night, a moment just for Sean and me, no interruptions, no one stealing it away. I was wrong. Again. Sean and I agreed to stay at his parents' house, his childhood home, so we could catch an early flight the next morning for our honeymoon. It was a practical choice since his parents' place was less than 15 minutes from the airport. I wasn't excited about it, but I was exhausted. The whole day had drained me. All I wanted was to wash off my makeup, change into pajamas, lie next to the person I loved, and be silent. We waited for everyone to leave, said our goodbyes, then quietly went upstairs. Margaret was still downstairs talking half drunk, half crying with a relative, glass in hand like a security blanket. I asked Sean, "Your mom? Doesn't look like she plans to sleep." He shrugged. "She'll be completely drunk in 10 minutes. Don't worry." I went into the bathroom first. I brought my pajamas, a simple, modest cotton set, nothing sexy or daring. I'm a private person. I don't wear pajamas in front of others, not even my mother-in-law. When I came out, I was still wrapped in a towel. Sean closed the door behind me and locked it. He started changing. I turned away and changed my clothes quietly. The nightlight was soft, the atmosphere peaceful. For the first time all day, I felt a bit of privacy. Until the door suddenly swung open. No knock, no warning. Margaret walked in, phone raised, ready to record. "Have you started opening wedding gifts yet? I want to snap a few pics before bed." Her voice was slurred, the smell of alcohol hitting my nose. She walked straight into the room, oblivious that I was topless, having just taken off my shirt to put on pajamas. Sean had just finished putting on pants. No shirt yet. I stood frozen, almost like stone. Sean shouted, "Mom, get out!" But Margaret just stood there, smiling hazily. "I didn't see anything. It's just gift opening photos." I yelled, voice trembling. "Get out! Get out now!" She startled, then stepped back, but kept staring at her phone screen, camera still on. I grabbed the blanket from the bed, wrapped myself tightly, then collapsed into a corner, shaking uncontrollably. My whole body froze. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. Only tears kept flowing. Sean locked the door, rushed over to hold me. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My mom, she's drunk. She didn't know you were changing." I shook my head. It wasn't just about seeing. It was about barging in, no knock, holding up a camera, and feeling no shame. I was once a victim of abuse. No one in Sean's family knew. But since I was a child, I learned to fiercely protect my space. And tonight, Margaret shattered that final boundary. I whispered, barely hearing my own voice. "Sean, I can't take this anymore. I feel disgusting. I feel dirty. Do you understand?" He held me, comforted me, but I knew he didn't truly understand. We stayed the night. If you could call it sleep. I stayed awake. Sean breathed evenly at some point. I'm not sure when. All I knew was every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Margaret's camera flash and felt utterly powerless to be myself. The next morning, as we were getting ready to leave, Margaret appeared at the door. Her eyes were red, mascara smeared down her cheeks, voice thick with tears. "I can't believe my daughter-in-law was so cold yesterday on such an important day. I just wanted to take a few photos. Why act like I'm a criminal?" I looked at her, then at Sean. He stood silent again, said nothing again, didn't protect me again. And for the first time in my life, I lost it. I stepped forward, looked Margaret in the eye, and spoke slowly, clearly. "Sorry, Mom. Yesterday, I didn't have time to put on nipple makeup so you could get a clear shot. I'll remember next time." The whole house went silent. Margaret rolled her eyes, then burst into tears. "You're making things up. You're slandering me. You're a vicious liar." I said nothing, grabbed my suitcase and walked out. Sean chased after me, grabbed my hand. "You're being too much." I pulled away, whispering, "Too much is when your mom walks in while I'm naked, and you stand there, defending her." The airport was only 15 minutes from my in-laws' house, but that morning, I felt like I had just completed a cross-continental journey, both physically and mentally. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten breakfast, hadn't spoken, just packed my things, locked my suitcase, and was ready to leave as soon as possible. Margaret didn't come to see me off. She locked the door to her room, either pretending to sleep or simply not wanting to see me. Sean hurriedly carried the luggage out to the car, while I followed, passport and plane ticket in hand, telling myself, "Just get out of here. Get out of this city. Get away from her." But life isn't that easy. Just as we closed the trunk, the door to the house slammed open. Margaret appeared, face swollen and red, clutching a wool scarf as if at a funeral. She rushed over and blocked the car door. "Sean, aren't you saying anything to your mother? Why leave like this? No hug? No thank you? No last photo?" Sean scratched his head, embarrassed. He clearly didn't expect Mom to be awake so early. He glanced at me, hoping I'd make peace like before. But I was no longer the girl who catered to adults, endured, and saved her husband's face. I opened the car door, didn't look at Margaret, didn't say goodbye, but she wasn't about to leave me alone. What did I do wrong? She yelled. I just wanted to capture happy moments. You're acting like I'm some kind of pervert. I turned around and for the first time looked her straight in the eye. No avoidance, no hesitation. You're not a pervert. You're just someone who doesn't respect boundaries, doesn't understand privacy, and never considers other people's feelings. Margaret stood frozen, but Sean jumped up angry. Come on, Mom already apologized. How long are you going to dredge this up? That was our wedding night. She didn't mean to. She was drunk. I scoffed. You call that drunk? Opening a phone camera, entering a locked room, holding the phone at just the right angle. Who's drunk enough to do that? He was silent. I put the plane ticket in Sean's hand and said coldly, You go. I'm not in the mood to pretend to enjoy a sweet week with a man who stood still while his wife was humiliated. Sean looked at me, face drained of color. Are you serious? I am. He turned to his mother, then back to me. Like a child torn between two sides. You're forcing me to choose between Mom and you? I nodded. No fear, no avoidance, no apology. Number, I don't need you to choose. I already chose. I choose to leave. As soon as the taxi arrived, I stepped out of the house, opened the door, got in, slammed it shut, and didn't look back. As the car drove away, I looked through the rearview mirror. Margaret was bowed against Sean's shoulder, crying loudly like she'd just witnessed a tragedy. Sean stood there, not chasing after us, not calling, not holding on, just standing still, like a flagpole, in another woman's life. That night, I returned to my small apartment, the place I'd moved out of to start married life. The room was just as I left it. An old photo of Sean tilted on a shelf, books I'd abandoned halfway through because I was too busy being a wife. I set down my suitcase, turned on the light, and for the first time in weeks of chaos, I took a deep breath. No one barged in, no one grabbed the camera, no one told me I was too sensitive. I don't know where this marriage is headed, but I do know one thing. I am no longer the silent daughter-in-law, and I am no longer the woman who will stand behind, endure, just to please the word family. I filed for divorce 8 days after the wedding. Not because Sean did something cruel, but because he did nothing, while all the cruelty fell on me. I gave no warning, didn't send a single word. I just went to the lawyer's office, signed the papers, filed them, and chose to end it unilaterally, according to state law. The marriage was less than a month old, but to me, it had been dead long ago, from the day the man I loved stood by silently as his mother trampled me. 2 weeks later, Sean showed up. He stood at the door of my apartment, the place I'd left to become his wife, and now the place I returned to escape that role. I opened the door, silent. He looked tired, hollow, but his eyes lacked what I needed: remorse. Are you really ending this? I nodded. You gave me no choice. Sean lowered his head. My mom? She didn't know. She didn't mean to. You know that. I looked at him, voice steady. Sean, your mom isn't the biggest problem. You are, because you knew, you saw, you heard, and you chose to do nothing. He was silent. Like always. I stepped back, keeping my distance. I used to think love was enough, that if you loved enough, were patient enough, understood enough, you'd be loved back. But I was wrong. Love doesn't save anyone if they always let someone else lead the way. And I'm tired of playing the good daughter-in-law, the patient bride, the understanding wife, while not being allowed to be myself. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't hit or curse. I just spoke the truth I'd held inside for too long. Sean reached for my hand, but I stepped back. don't. I don't want the hand that pushed me into darkness to pretend to pull me into the light. He bowed his head, didn't try again, and I closed the door. Gently, quietly, without looking back. I didn't tell anyone in my family. No need. They knew. They saw me lose weight, saw me become quieter, saw my eyes change. But no one asked. They waited for me to speak. And one night, I did. Not to make anyone angry on my behalf, but just to free myself from silence. I started therapy soon after. Saw a specialist every week, wrote in a journal daily. Every time I closed my eyes, I still saw Margaret storming into the room, Sean turning away, the silent eyes as I screamed in despair. But bit by bit, those images stopped dominating my mind. I bought a new dress, not a wedding dress, a light blue linen dress with a bow at the back. I wore it on afternoon walks, sitting alone in the park, listening to music, reading books. For the first time in years, I felt free. 1 month after I filed, Sean sent a handwritten letter, sent through his lawyer. The message was brief. I'm sorry, but I don't know what else to do. My mom is my whole life. I read it, folded it up, didn't reply. One thought echoed in my mind, but I'm not. One evening, I happened to see Margaret post a story online. She was sitting, drinking, tears streaming down her face, shouting at the screen. She left him, married less than a month, and she left. Ungrateful daughter. I knew it. I knew she would betray my son. I quietly turned it off. No emotion, no anger, no pity, because I knew. I hadn't betrayed anyone. I'd saved myself. This isn't a fairy tale ending. I didn't find new love right away. I didn't become a millionaire. No one came crying to apologize. But I have one thing, something I lost a long time ago. My own voice. And for me, that's enough.